On Friday, as the sunlight streamed through the classroom windows, we gathered excitedly for our English lesson. The air was filled with chatter and laughter. Our teacher stood at the front, her eyes sparkling with enthusiasm. Today was special. She had a question that would lead us into a fascinating conversation. What was your first reason to learn English? She asked, pausing to let her words sink in. Do you remember the moment when you started to learn English? When did you start to be really interested in the language? The question hung in the air, and I could see my classmates deep in thought. I leaned back in my chair, letting memories flood my mind. I remembered the first time I heard English. It was in a movie with my family. I was captivated by the sounds and the way the characters spoke. I was only a kid, but I felt a spark of curiosity. That moment ignited my desire to learn. As I glanced around the room, I could see others reflecting on their own experiences. One student raised his hand eagerly, saying, I remember watching cartoons in English. I loved the funny voices, and I wanted to understand what they were saying. Another student chimed in. For me, it was the music. I heard English songs, and I wanted to sing along. That's when I started to learn the words. Each story was unique, but we all shared that same feeling of excitement and wonder. Our teacher nodded, encouraging more stories to flow. Isn't it amazing how different things inspire us? She said with a smile. These moments are what help us connect with the language. They make learning personal. I felt a warm sense of camaraderie in the room. It was like we were all on this journey together, each with our own reasons and inspirations. As we continued sharing, I realized that every story added to my own motivation. Each experience reminded me of how important it was to stay curious and open-minded. I thought about how far I had come since that first moment of curiosity. Learning English had become more than just a task. It was a part of my life, filled with stories, songs, and friendships. I couldn't wait to see where this journey would take me next. I raised my hand, feeling a mix of excitement and a little nervousness. I remember the moment when I started to be really interested in English, I said, a smile spreading across my face as I thought back to that day. The classroom quieted, and my teacher leaned forward, encouraging me with her warm gaze. Can you tell us what happened? She asked, her voice inviting me to share my story. I took a deep breath, gathering my thoughts. It was a sunny afternoon, I began, picturing myself back in that moment. I was watching a movie with my family. It was an animated film, and the characters were so lively and funny. I didn't understand everything, but the music and colors drew me in. Then there was this one scene where the characters sang a catchy song. I loved it. I could see my classmates nodding along, some even smiling as they imagined the scene. I wanted to know what the song meant. I thought it was so cool to hear them sing in English. That's when I decided I wanted to learn more. I wanted to sing along too. My teacher smiled brightly, clearly enjoying my story. That sounds wonderful. Music is such a great way to learn. It makes everything feel more fun. I felt a sense of pride as I shared my experience. After that, I started to listen to more English songs. I would look up the lyrics and sing along, even if I didn't get all the words right. It was so much fun. The class was engaged, and I felt connected to my classmates. I remember sitting with my headphones on, replaying my favorite songs over and over. I would get excited every time I learned a new word. It felt like a little victory. I could hear some whispers of agreement from my friends. They seemed to relate to my journey. Music opened up a whole new world for me. I continued, feeling the energy in the room. It helped me feel more comfortable with the sounds of English. I wanted to hear more stories, watch more movies, and learn even more. I could tell that everyone was listening closely, and it made me feel even more excited to share. I couldn't wait to see what else we would talk about in our class. I took a moment to gather my thoughts before speaking. Yes, I can definitely share my story. First, I have to say that English wasn't always my favorite subject. In fact, it used to be one of the hardest classes for me. I started to learn English when I entered high school. I remember sitting in that classroom feeling a bit lost. At the beginning, it was very difficult for me. Everything felt so new and confusing. As I spoke, I could see my classmates nodding, some even leaning in closer. I continued. I didn't understand the structure of the language at all. It felt like everything I had learned vanished. I could hear a few of my classmates chuckling softly, probably remembering their own struggles with English. I tried really hard to learn grammar, too, but it was just so complicated. All those tenses and exceptions made my head spin. I would get frustrated and think, why can't it just be simple? I laughed a little, thinking about those days. It felt like every time I finally understood something, there would be another rule or word that would trip me up. I felt like I was running in circles. But even with all those challenges, there was a part of me that didn't want to give up. I kept pushing through, thinking that maybe one day it would get easier. I wanted to be able to speak and connect with others in English. I could see my classmates having fun with the language, and I wanted that too. I noticed a couple of students smiling, and it encouraged me to keep going. Slowly but surely, I began to find little successes. I started to enjoy some of the songs and movies, even if I didn't understand everything. I realized that learning English was like going on a journey. It wasn't just about memorizing rules or words. It was about discovering new things. It was challenging, yes, but there was also excitement in it. Every new word I learned felt like a small victory, and I was determined to keep moving forward. As I sat there reminiscing about my school days, I remembered how I felt when I finished high school. I was still only a beginner in English. I remember feeling a wave of disappointment wash over me as I thought about all those years in class. Despite all the effort I had put in, I still couldn't speak English well. It was really frustrating. I had tried so hard, but I often found myself stuck. unable to express my thoughts. I'd sit in class, listening to my teacher and classmates, and it felt like they were speaking a different language altogether. I thought about all the times I had studied vocabulary words and grammar rules, but they just wouldn't stick. No matter how many flashcards I made or how many exercises I completed, I still felt like I was missing something. I couldn't understand why it was so hard for me. There were moments when I even doubted myself. I began to believe that maybe English wasn't meant for me. I felt like I was destined to be a person who couldn't connect with others in this beautiful language. I remember sitting alone at lunch, listening to my friends chat in English. Their laughter and ease with the language made me feel more distant. I thought, will I ever be able to join in on those conversations? It was like standing outside a warm house while everyone inside was having fun. I wanted to be part of that warmth, but the door felt locked. I often found myself daydreaming about what it would be like to speak English fluently. I imagined traveling to new places, making friends, and sharing stories. But then, reality would hit me, and I'd think, how can I do that when I struggle to form a simple sentence? The fear of failure was strong, and it made me want to retreat. I felt trapped in my own mind, convinced that learning English was something I would never achieve. But deep down, a small voice kept telling me to try again. It urged me not to give up. I thought about how many people learned languages in different ways. I started to wonder if there might be a path for me, too. Perhaps there was a way to break through this barrier. Maybe I just hadn't found the right method yet. I wanted to believe that there was hope for me and my journey with English. Then something wonderful happened that changed everything for me. I always liked music, but one day I stumbled upon a band that made my heart skip a beat. It was when I was 20 that I started to listen to the Beatles. Their melodies were so catchy, and their lyrics were full of emotion. I found myself humming along even though I didn't know all the words. But I wanted to understand what they were singing. I was curious about the stories behind the songs. So, I made a decision. I started to translate their songs. I would play a song over and over, pausing it, just to write down the lyrics. At first it was really hard. I would look up words I didn't know, and my dictionary became my best friend. I spent hours sitting in my room, scribbling down translations, and sometimes it felt like a puzzle I was trying to solve. It wasn't just about the words. It was about the feelings and messages in the music. As I listened to more songs, something exciting happened. Slowly I began to understand more and more. The phrases that once felt so confusing started to make sense. I remember the first time I could sing along with a full song without stopping to look up a word. It was like a light bulb went off in my head. I felt a rush of joy and accomplishment. And even my listening skills. I could hear how the words flowed together in real conversations. It was as if the Beatles were my teachers, guiding me through this beautiful language. Soon, I wanted to explore more than just their music. I began to seek out other artists and genres. I listened to everything from pop to rock to folk. I found that each style had its own unique charm, and I was eager to dive deeper into the world of English songs. I would search for lyrics online and try to sing along with every artist I discovered. This journey through music opened up a whole new world for me, one where I felt less like a beginner and more like someone who was learning and growing. The more I listened, the more excited I became about the language. It felt like I was finally making progress. Then one day something amazing happened. I was on a train just sitting quietly when I noticed two ladies sitting across from me. They were chatting and laughing, their voices filled with a friendly warmth that made me smile. I could hear their English clearly, and I was fascinated. I thought to myself, wow, I want to join in. So I took a deep breath and decided to speak to them. I started with a simple question about the weather. To my surprise, they smiled and responded with kindness. We ended up having a simple conversation about our lives. I asked them about England, and they told me stories about their favorite places. They spoke about parks, castles, and even famous dishes. I listened closely, trying to catch every word. Each sentence they spoke felt like a small gift, and I cherished it. That little chat made a big difference for me. For the first time, I felt a spark of hope. I started to believe that I could actually learn English. It wasn't just a dream anymore. It felt possible. From that moment on, I committed to working on my English almost every day. I began to practice speaking more, listening more, and even reading simple books. I felt like a student eager to learn, and I was getting better and better. Every new word I learned was like a victory, and I celebrated those small wins. With each passing week, I felt more confident. I practiced with friends, watched shows, and even tried writing little notes in English. I remember one day feeling bold enough to write a short email to a pen pal I found online. I was nervous, but I pressed send, and when I received a reply, I was overjoyed. Then, after a lot of thought, I made a big decision. I decided to go to England. I wanted to be in the place where the language came alive. I knew that living there would give me the chance to improve my English even more. I wanted to see the beautiful parks, visit the historic sites, and meet more people who spoke English. The idea of immersing myself in the language excited me. So I started planning my trip. I saved up money and researched schools where I could learn. I imagined myself walking through the streets of London, practicing my English with locals, and sharing my story. It felt like a new adventure was waiting for me, and I was ready to take the leap. I couldn't wait to see what awaited me in England and how much more I could learn. My teacher smiled at me and thanked me for sharing my story. She looked thoughtful, and I could see she was trying to connect the dots. "You know," she said, "there is something very interesting about your story." I leaned in, curious to hear what she would say next. "In the beginning, you were just you. You didn't have the motivation to learn English at all. It felt like a mountain to climb. and you didn't believe you could reach the top. But then something changed, didn't it? I nodded, feeling the memories come flooding back. Yes, it really did, I replied. When I discovered music, it opened a new door for me. I wanted to understand the songs. I was eager to know what the Beatles were singing about. That gave me the push I needed. Exactly, my teacher exclaimed, her eyes brightening. When you found that motivation, everything shifted. You became a different person. You started to believe in yourself. You worked hard, and you made progress. It's like the light bulb went on, and you could finally see the way forward. You can see that motivation is very important, right? When you have it, you can succeed. It fuels your journey. She paused for a moment, letting her words sink in. I felt a warm glow inside, knowing that my hard work had not gone unnoticed. And when you don't have it, she continued, it can be very hard to be successful. You might feel stuck or frustrated, like you are trying to swim against the current. Motivation is like a compass. It guides you and helps you stay on track. I thought about what she said. I remembered those times when I struggled with English, back when it felt so overwhelming. It was hard to stay focused, and I often wanted to give up. But now, everything felt different. With my new motivation, I was excited to learn. I wanted to keep pushing myself. I realized that motivation was the key to unlocking my potential. Now, my teacher said, you have to keep that motivation alive. Find new things that inspire you. Keep listening to music, watching films, and talking to people. Each new experience will feed that fire inside you. I nodded eagerly, feeling inspired by her words. I wanted to take her advice to heart and continue my journey. Thank you for helping me see this, I said, grateful for her guidance. I really appreciate it. As I looked around the classroom, I saw other students nodding too. I knew we were all in this together, each on our own path, but all seeking that same light of understanding. I felt a sense of community, and it made my heart swell with hope. I was ready to embrace the next steps in my learning journey. I wanted to explore more, to learn more, and to grow as a person. With every lesson and every conversation, I could feel myself becoming a better version of me. I was excited about what the future held, and I couldn't wait to see how far I would go with my English. Then our teacher turns to the whole class and asks everyone about their motivation to learn English. I can feel the excitement in the room as each person thinks about their reasons. The stories that follow are really interesting, and I listen closely to each one. One girl speaks up first. She says that her motivation is to read historical books in their original English. She loves history and wants to dive deep into those old stories. I can see her eyes sparkle with passion as she shares her dream. Next, a tall student chimes in. He wants to be a professional tennis coach in England. He explains that he knows he needs to speak perfect English before he starts his career. I admire his determination. He has clear goals, and I can sense his excitement about the future. I think about how much practice he will need to reach that level. It's inspiring to hear his plans. Then, a woman sitting in the back raises her hand. She says she wants to work for a big international company. To do that, she needs English for her job. It's essential for her career growth, and she talks about how English will open doors for her. I can tell she's serious about her goals, and her words resonate with me. I wonder how many opportunities she could have once she masters the language. As I listen to everyone, I realize something important. Everyone in the class has some kind of motivation. It's clear that learning English is not just about grammar and vocabulary for us. It's about using the language in real life. Some want to read, some want to coach, and others want to work in exciting jobs. We all have dreams and aspirations that require English. I feel a warm sense of connection with my classmates. We're all on this journey together, each with our own stories and reasons. I think about my own journey and how I want to improve my English. It makes me feel like I'm part of something bigger. We're all striving to learn and grow, and that's really powerful. The teacher nods as she listens, and I can tell she appreciates our enthusiasm. She encourages us to keep sharing our stories. It feels good to talk about our goals. It helps me remember why I started learning English in the first place. With every story, I feel more inspired. I can't wait to see how we all achieve our dreams. As the class goes on, I find myself thinking about my own motivation. I realize that understanding English will not only help me communicate, but also connect with others in a deeper way. I want to explore new cultures, meet new people, and discover what the world has to offer. With each new lesson, I am getting closer to that goal. It makes me excited for what lies ahead. At the end of the lesson, our teacher asks us a very simple question. She wants to know if we like English. Everyone seems a bit curious about how others will answer. I take a moment to think. When I was in high school, English felt like a burden. It was hard, and I often struggled. I remember sitting in class trying to understand all those confusing rules. I would feel lost, like I was trying to find my way in a maze with no map. But now it's different. With a smile, I say, I didn't like English at my high school, but now I like it a lot. I can see how useful it is to know this language. The words come out easily, and I feel proud saying them. It's amazing how my feelings have changed. Back then, I saw English as just another subject I had to pass. I didn't understand its importance, but now it feels like a key to the world. I remember the moment it clicked for me. I was listening to a song in English, and I wanted to understand the lyrics. I started to realize that knowing English could help me connect with so many things: music, movies, books, and even people. The more I learned, the more I enjoyed it. I think about all the conversations I can have and the places I can go because I understand English. As I look around the room, I see that some of my classmates nod in agreement. They have their stories too. I wonder if they feel the same way I do. I want to know what changed for them. Did they also have a moment when everything clicked? Or did they always love English? The teacher smiles back at me and encourages others to share their thoughts. I can see the excitement in her eyes. This is a space where we can all express ourselves. One by one, my classmates begin to share their experiences. It feels good to hear their stories. Some talk about their favorite movies in English or songs they enjoy. Others mention how learning English helps them communicate with friends or family. I listen closely, feeling a strong sense of community. Each story is unique, yet they all connect back to the same idea. English opens doors. I can feel my excitement growing as I think about what we are all achieving together. The teacher then tells us that language learning is a journey. It's not just about grammar or vocabulary. It's about connection. I can relate to that. Every new word I learn feels like a bridge to new opportunities. I want to explore more, travel, and meet new people who speak English. By the end of the class, I realize that my journey is just beginning. I've come so far, and I'm ready to learn even more. English is no longer just a subject for me. It's a way of seeing the world. I feel grateful to be here, learning and growing alongside my classmates. Together we are building our future with each lesson, and I can't wait to see where it leads us. Our teacher looks at us with a warm smile and says, "This is another important factor when you learn a new language. It is good when you like something that is connected to English." Her voice is encouraging, and I lean forward in my seat, eager to hear more. She continues, "It can be people, music, culture, or history. If you like English, it is easier for you to learn it." I think about what she just said. It really makes sense. I remember when I started to listen to English music. At first, I just liked the beat, but then I wanted to understand the words. I would listen to the same song over and over, trying to catch every word. The more I listened, the more I fell in love with the lyrics. I even began to look up the meanings of songs. I tell my classmates, I feel the same way. When I discovered the Beatles, it changed everything for me. I wanted to know what they were singing about. I can see some heads nodding in agreement. I wonder if others feel inspired by music, too. The teacher nods, encouraging everyone to share their stories. One girl raises her hand and says, "I love watching movies in English. It makes me laugh, and I can learn new words at the same time." I can tell she enjoys it, and her excitement spreads around the room. Another student chimes in, "I like reading about famous people. Their stories are so interesting. I want to know more about them in English. I think about how many amazing stories there are in the world, just waiting to be discovered." Our teacher smiles and adds, "Exactly. When you find something you love, learning becomes fun. You want to dive deeper into that world." I realize she is right. I've spent hours listening to English songs and watching shows. Each time I feel like I'm getting closer to the language. As I sit there, I think about how learning English is like opening a door. Each song, movie, or book is a new way to step inside. I feel excited about all the things I can explore. There's a whole world out there filled with stories, and I want to be part of it. Our teacher encourages us to think about what we love that connects to English. I close my eyes for a moment, letting my mind wander. I picture myself in England, walking through a beautiful park, listening to the sounds of the city. I see myself chatting with people, sharing stories and laughing together. The bell rings. signaling the end of class. But I don't want to leave. I want to talk more about what we enjoy and how it helps us learn. I can feel the energy in the room. Everyone seems eager to continue sharing their thoughts. This lesson isn't just about language. It's about connection. As we gather our things, I glance at my classmates, and I feel grateful. We are all on this journey together. I look forward to what we will learn next, and I can't wait to dive into more music, movies, and stories in English. Each day brings new adventures, and I am excited to embrace them all. One day in class, our teacher said something that really stuck with me. She looked at us all seriously and said, "If you want to be able to communicate in English, it is good to know 3,000 words or more." The room went quiet as we all absorbed what she said. I never thought about how many words I needed to learn. It sounded like a lot. But then she continued, "If you don't like English, it is more difficult to find time to practice enough to get to the level of 3,000 words." As I sat there, I thought about my own journey with English. When I first started, I barely knew any words. I struggled to put together simple sentences, but things began to change when I found out how fun learning could be. I remembered the first time I listened to an English song and tried to sing along. It was a struggle, but it was also exciting. I wanted to know what every word meant, and that made me curious. I started writing down words I didn't know. Every time I learned a new word, I felt like I was gaining a little treasure. I remember sitting in my room with my notebook, flipping through pages filled with new words. "Okay, I can do this," I would say to myself. The more I practiced, the more I started to enjoy it. I would even look up the lyrics to my favorite songs and sing them in the shower. I looked around the classroom and saw that some of my classmates had big smiles. They seemed to get it too. One girl raised her hand and said, "I've learned so many words from watching cartoons in English. It's like a game for me." I nodded because I understood how that felt. The stories in cartoons were simple, but they helped her learn without feeling overwhelmed. Another student spoke up, saying, "I read children's books. They are easy to understand and fun to read." I loved that idea. Children's books often had pictures that helped tell the story. I realized that it wasn't just about memorizing words. It was about finding ways to enjoy the language. Our teacher encouraged us to think of our favorite activities and how we could connect them to learning English. She said, "If you love what you do, you will find the time to practice. It won't feel like a chore. It will feel fun." I started thinking about all the things I loved: music, movies, and even cooking. I could learn English through recipes. The more I thought about it, the more excited I became. I wanted to try it all. I could watch English cooking shows, listen to music, or read books that interested me. The idea of using my hobbies to learn made it feel much easier. It wasn't just about the words. It was about how those words could help me express myself. As the lesson continued, I could feel the energy in the room. We were all starting to see the connections between our interests and learning English. Our teacher smiled and said, "Remember, each word you learn brings you closer to speaking and understanding this beautiful language." I felt a spark of motivation in me. I realized that if I found joy in learning, reaching that goal of 3,000 words wouldn't be as hard. It would be a fun adventure, and I was ready for it. I looked forward to exploring the world of English, using the words I learned to share my stories and experiences. With a newfound determination, I left the classroom feeling excited about what lay ahead on my journey. As I sat in class, I couldn't help but smile. I nodded at my teacher's words because I could agree with her completely. Learning English had become so much more than just a subject to me. I thought about how far I had come since those early days of struggling to understand. Now I not only liked the Beatles and their catchy tunes, but also appreciated my teacher. She had a way of making English feel alive and fun. Her enthusiasm for the language inspired me every day. And then there was my boss. He was English too, and he had a great sense of humor. I remembered the first time he told a joke during a meeting. I didn't understand it at first, but everyone laughed. I tried to laugh along, even though I felt a little lost. But as I listened more and spent time with him, I started to get his jokes. I realized that English humor was different from my own, but it was so clever. It made me laugh, and I loved the feeling it brought. Now, with these connections, it was much easier for me to find time to practice English every day. It wasn't just about studying from books anymore. I would listen to the Beatles while cooking dinner, singing along to the words I had learned. Sometimes, I even found myself chuckling at the witty lines in English sitcoms I watched in the evenings. It felt good to understand what they were saying and to catch those funny moments. I also remembered my classmates. We often shared our favorite songs and jokes. One day a classmate shared a hilarious English meme, and we all laughed together. It felt so good to connect with them over our shared love for the language. We would talk about our favorite bands, movies, and even try to translate funny phrases from English to our native languages. It became a fun game. I started to notice that I was speaking more confidently. Whether it was with my friends, at work, or even with my teacher, I felt like I could express myself better.